The story of the desegregation of the University of Georgia, also known as UGA, is long and complicated. It began in the fall of 1959 with the applications of Charlene Hunter and Hamilton Holmes, two African-American high school students. These two were described as being perfectly cast for the role and remarkably smart and attractive. Despite their positive qualities, a year and a half of legal battles began, attempting to stop the students from enrolling at UGA.
During this period of time, the United States was experiencing a full civil rights movement aimed to create equality for all citizens. Specifically for the case of Hunter and Holmes, the fight was for integration of UGA, a public university. They tried to get into UGA, but the university postponed their acceptance. Because of the postponement, both Hunter and Holmes attended different universities until UGA finally was forced to admit them. During their wait, their admission was being fought in court. Their lawyers, Donald Hollowell, Vernon Jordan, and Horace Ward, all civil rights activists, worked together to have Hunter and Holmes admitted to UGA.
Charlene Hunter and Hamilton Holmes became students at UGA in January of 1961. Holmes was forced to go through an interview process with admissions, which was unusual in and of itself. The requirement was added after Horace T. Ward applied to UGA School of Law in 1950 and was denied. During Holmes' interview, Walter Danner and Holmes asked Holmes inappropriate and irregular questions, attempting to devalue Holmes. Hunter also had an interview, and the interviewer was much more polite. Hunter herself described her meeting with the interviewers as pretty routine. Though Hunter's interview went well, the admissions office informed her that there was no room to house her on campus without relocating white females. On January 6, 1961, federal judge William Bootle mandated that Hunter and Holmes be admitted because they would already have been admitted had it not been for their race and color. The Georgia legislature was not pleased with this, so they threatened to take the university's accreditation away, leaving all the students with a worthless degree. The students for constructive action wrote a letter to the government about their school possibly losing its accreditation. Many of the student leaders felt that closing the school would be more harmful than integration. Charlie Christian, the senior class president of UGA, said, "I believe that the university should remain segregated, but not if it means closing the school. I think that education should come before segregation." The state threatened to take $2 million away from UGA if it integrated the students. This made it very important to UGA to stay segregated.
Holmes and Hunter started classes on the morning of January 9, 1961. Their admission had the same backlash. The first major disturbance was a riot held on January 12, 1961, just 3 days after their first classes. It was a march to Hunter's dorm room on Myers Quad. The riot was spurred on by members of the Ku Klux Klan who had helped fraternity members plan out the riot. In Hunter's dormitory, all the other residents turned their lights off to ensure the rioters knew which room was hers. Bricks and other debris were thrown at the window, breaking hers and several others. The state patrol did not arrive for another 2.5 hours after the riot had mostly calmed down, leaving the Athens Police Department to handle the situation. Dean William Tate made one of the more overt efforts to end the riot after the tear gas was used by moving through the students and calling for their student IDs. The riot dwindled and dispersed as the night went on, but the actions, or lack thereof, by local, state, and federal peoples and the authorities proved their stance on integration. The reactions of the University of Georgia citizens were mixed following the riot. Some people felt that the riots went too far and led to fear being spread across the campus. The Red and Black wrote, "We hope you rabble-rousers who planned, organized, and carried through that little exhibition last night are not truly representative of the campus." Many people were horrified by the actions that took place that night, but not everyone felt that the riot was a disgrace. Some people reacted to Dean Tate's actions on the night of the riot as aggressive and harsh to the white students of UGA. While the reactions of the community were mixed, the riot would lead to severe consequences for the university.
The violent action scared the university into taking serious action. After being escorted away by the police, Dean Williams suspended Hunter and Holmes for their own safety and the safety of almost 7,000 other students. Faculty members signed a petition to insist that the two suspended students be returned to their classes. After their suspension, Holmes and his attorneys began looking for ways to overturn this through the court. Jordan found out that a white female student from Atlanta was allowed to transfer to UGA, and she had a similar situation to Hunter. They called UGA out on their claim that all the girls' dormitories were full, yet this girl from Atlanta was allowed to transfer. They notified the Board of Regents and prepared a suit to get Holmes and Hunter back.
There were a variety of reactions to the riots from different people. For example, only a couple of days after the riot, another African American woman decided to attend UGA. Mary Frances Early, a music teacher that was studying to receive her master's degree at the University of Michigan, decided to transfer to UGA. She applied for the summer session of school in 1961 to UGA's graduate program in the School of Music. She finished her master's degree in 1962 and became the first African American to graduate from UGA. Unlike Hunter and Holmes, Early decided to attend UGA for the cause of the Civil Rights Movement. She also joined the university's chorus and became the first African American to participate in any extracurricular activity at UGA. However, Mary Frances Early was one of only 3 people who started the desegregation at UGA and tried to live a life there.
While Hamilton Holmes and Charlotte Hunter attended UGA, they tried to carry out their lives like normal students. Hamilton Holmes went to class during the weeks and went home to Atlanta on the weekends. However, Charlene Hunter tried to be active in the social life of the university. In one Red and Black article, Hunter was reported going to a Snelling dining hall with 3 friends speaking to several students as they passed. Hunter continued to try to not let the negativity of the other students around her interfere with her time at UGA. However, their positive experiences on campus could not outweigh the negative outcomes that were constantly present at UGA. Holmes versus Danner began on December 13, 1960, and similar attitudes towards Holmes and Hunter reappeared. Assistant Registrar Paul R. Key saw Holmes as uncooperative and having arrogance and contempt, while seeing Hunter as calm and well-spoken, which was all rooted in the subconscious view of black men as opposed to black women being more threatening. President Adderhold testified 3 separate times that UGA did not discriminate against students based on racial grounds. He also described non-white UGA applicants on exactly the same basis as white applicants. Horace Ward then called Holmes to stand, where he testified that the interviewers asked him very little about his academic qualifications and more about his involvement in activism. Ward used this to enhance his argument that the interviewers were not seeking to qualify you, but to disqualify you, and at that time it really didn't matter to them how they did it. Boodle recognized that UGA had no hard rules excluding black people from attending, but the attitudes towards whom they let in had a lot of racial overtones. He also noted that Holmes and Hunter would have no issue if they were not black, and he used the letter to President Adderhold as plenty of reason to rule out lack of housing as a barrier. Most of the people involved expected that the plaintiffs would be admitted in the spring quarter, but to their surprise, they were admitted immediately. The reception to this ruling was as expected. That night, a group of 150 to 200 students formed a mob at the Arch, and they hanged a black-faced effigy of Hamilton Holmes. They sang choruses of Dixie, chants from fraternities indicating that they would not allow students of color to enter into their brotherhood, and anti-integration chants. The rioters constructed burning crosses and planned to erect one in front of President Adderhold's home. William Tate tried his best to disrupt the events, but the rioters were too great in number. The campus died down by the time Holmes returned to campus, but Holmes still noted that it felt like enemy territory.
The local responses of UGA and the state defined the controversy of desegregation. While many students within the university were against the integration, there were still many people who were against violence towards the students. Tom Bollock, the Blue Key Society president, said, "Yet I do believe that the students at the university will conduct themselves at all times in a way to make Georgia proud. Student opinion should be given, but in a way so as to reflect satisfactory on our campus." Along with nonviolence, other people were proud of Dean Joseph Williams' actions on the matter of integration. H.B. Henderson, head of the dairy department at UGA, congratulated Dean Williams on his actions during the very trying circumstances. However, many of the reactions of Georgians were focused on the desegregation of the university and its impact on white students. Speaking as an alum, W.J. Thurman felt that the treatment of Hunter Holmes was unfair to the other students. Thurman protested, "From the outset, these two have, according to press releases, been pampered by special and unusual treatment and courtesies not extended to all students at the university. This I know from actual experience." The feeling of special treatment continued throughout the state, with another alum, W.C. Woodall Jr., critiquing Dean Williams and his actions relating to the school's integration. "I view your actions as 1. Anti-Southern, 2. Discriminatory to white students, and 3. Pro-Negro," stated Woodall. While the reactions from people within the university and the state of Georgia conflicted from hostile to peaceful, the integration process of the University of Georgia transformed the racial tensions of the state during the civil rights movement.
The story of integration of UGA was also important for other schools. The integration of Holmes, Hunter, and Early affected public education below the university level. In August, 9 African American students integrated 4 previously segregated Atlanta schools. Though forced, UGA helped start a trend, which would bring the eventual end to segregation in public education. In relation to Athens' public education, schools were not affected by UGA's integration, because there was such a small population of middle-class African Americans and a much larger population of whites disinterested in their future. There was no emphasis on giving African American students a better education. Most students were taught by teachers who were only technically qualified, but not fully prepared to teach, causing African American students to be even further behind their white counterparts. Furthermore, Clark County would not integrate into the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Today, UGA and public schools in Athens, Clark County are integrated. However, UGA does not properly represent minorities in staff or students. To put it into perspective, by 2000, 39 years after desegregation, only 9 of 600 full-time professors were African American. Additionally, of 7,602 students, only 434 students were African American in 2000. In 2013, 7% of students were African American, barely higher than in 2000 and much lower than the representation of African Americans in the state of Georgia. Thus, though the University of Georgia legally took action to end lawful racism, there is still progress to be made in order to properly represent African Americans at the university.